Hello everybody, and welcome to this, my first of 3 videos on the Canon EOS Rebel T3. It's been a long time in the making, getting to do some DSLR manuals, but here we are. Oh, that lens is disgustingly filthy. Let's just set that off to the side for now. That's gross. Okay, so the Canon EOS Rebel T3 is an interchangeable lens DSLR. That basically means that you can take the lens off and put the same one or a different one back onto it at any time without affecting, well, the images, obviously. There's no film, so you don't really have to worry about ruining the film in a digital camera. This is a 1.6x crop factor APS-C 12.2 megapixel CMOS censored camera. What that means is that if you had, let's say, a 50 millimeter lens in 35 millimeter full frame terms, it would function in a way similar to about an 80 millimeter lens on this camera. At least what that, because of the crop factor. Basically, that just means your image area from a 50 millimeter lens would be about that of an 80. A 100 millimeter lens would be about that of a 160 millimeter lens. It doesn't change the lens's physics, it just changes the angle of view that's effectively conveyed into an image. This camera has a 3 frames per second burst rate for JPEGs and 2 frames per second for RAW files. And the buffer on this camera is affected by SD card write speed, but it can be up to 830 JPEG files and 5 RAW files. Now I assume that 830 figure means the smallest JPEG size, because those differences, 830 and 5, are way hard to reconcile. And I saw that 830 number repeated a few times, so it seems like a strange number. It seems actually very hard to believe, but that's the number I saw. The ISO range on this is 100 to 6400. It does record video in 16:9 at 720p at 30 frames per second. It has shutter speeds of 30 seconds up to 1/4000th and bulb. The viewfinder magnification right here is 0.87x, and it has 95% frame coverage. That means if you were to see your image here on this screen, what's in the viewfinder, you'd lose about 2.5% on each side, roughly, of the image in your viewfinder versus what's saved and what's on your LCD screen. It has a fixed focusing screen which shows your autofocus points, and what that means is that the focusing screen is in there, you can see, and you cannot remove it, and it shows the 9 autofocus points. And the flash sync on this camera is 1/200th of a second. The target market for this camera was entry-level users, and we know that because the camera has the Rebel badge on it. Rebel is what Canon uses to indicate their entry-level cameras. At the time of release, this was the lowest tier Canon camera. And there's nothing wrong with that. It can still take fine photos. Low tier doesn't mean bad images, and it doesn't mean a bad camera. What it means is the build quality is going to be a little bit lower than the high-end cameras, and the interface is going to be more menu-driven than button-driven. So as we go through these videos, one thing you're going to see is that time and time again, we're going to be going into the menu system here to do things because there simply aren't that many functions that you can control with the push of a single button. That right there, menus versus buttons, is the biggest difference between entry-level and professional or advanced level cameras. You can take wonderful images with any digital camera today. They are coming out in such high quality that interface is the differentiator. Interface and build quality. The camera works in this camera works to label things. When you go into the menu system, the guide, the help system, labels things in a manner that is easily understandable and generally free of jargon. And that's another thing that indicates this was an entry-level camera, because it's designed to appeal to and communicate with people who don't have a huge level of knowledge about photography jargon. This was made by Canon in Taiwan from 2011 to 2013. It was preceded by the Rebel XS, which was also called the 1000D or the KISS F. And it was concurrent with a whole boatload of cameras, including the 600, 650, 700, 60, 70, 60DA, 7D, 5D Mark II and Mark III, 1D Mark IV, 1DS Mark III, 1DX, and 1DC. And it was followed by the Rebel T5, also called the 1200D and the KISS X70. So now, if you have your Rebel T3, the 1100D, the KISS X50, we're going to do as we do and go over all of the functions and features in the camera. We're going to start on the top, as we do here, with the strap lugs. Then here we have the pop-up flash, and the camera has to be on, but if we push this button here, which is the pop-up flash release, camera has to be on and not in green mode. There we go, pop-up flash. That is just so much fun. Okay, anyway, back to business. This is the mode dial index, that little white line right there. This is the mode dial. We're going to go through the mode dial in video 2 and talk about what each of these different things are and how they affect your camera's function. On-off switch, flash pop-up release. Oh, forgot the flash hot shoe up here. This is the main dial. This is the shutter trigger right here. On the front of the camera, not a whole lot to see actually. We have the autofocus assist light right here, lens mount. The red dot there is your EF mounting index, and the white dot is your EFS mounting index. We'll see in video 2 how to do this, but if you see the white dot on a lens, that's your white dot mounting index. Lens release button right here. Then we have the EOS Rebel T3 badge. On the side, we'll come over here and we have 3 ports. On top, we have a remote control port, so if you have a corded remote, you can plug it in there. In the middle is a USB port for transferring data. And on the bottom is an HDMI out port so that you could use this to connect to a TV to project a slideshow or play your videos. Or I believe you could also use it as a camera, but and project it live onto your TV screen. But if I'm wrong about that, please leave a comment in the comments section. We'll go over to the right side next and see that there is nothing. On the back, we have the viewfinder here. Underneath the viewfinder eye cup, we have a diopter adjuster. So if you have a weak prescription, that is within, I couldn't find, I'm sure I just missed it in the manual. If your prescription is within the range of the diopter adjuster, you can take your glasses off to shoot with this if you adjust the diopter. Over here we have the LCD screen. We're going to spend a lot of time on this in video 3. Asterisk button, AF point selection button. The AV is also called the EV, or exposure value compensation button. And in playback mode, it's your trash button. Here we have the live view button, the little icon that looks like a camera with a screen on it. That's live view. It's also your record button in movie mode. Here we have the quick control and direct print button. So it's a quick control button in normal mode. And then the blue icon indicates that when you're in print mode, it's the quick print button. Display, ISO, drive mode, autofocus mode, white balance, set, menu, playback, and this is your light for SD card and battery use, and your speaker here. I think I forgot to mention on the front we have the microphone above your EOS badge right there. On the camera's bottom we have the battery and SD card port right here, so the battery and SD card go in the same place. What's the chamber? You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Anyway, tripod socket, serial number, certification information. And that is it for what is on, oh, and on the lens, we'll go over the lens because there are some functions here. We have, for most lens, a stabilization on-off switch. If you don't have that, it just means that your lens does not have in-lens stabilization. And then an autofocus manual focus switch. So if you want to manually focus, you control that on your lens. And if you want stabilization. You can turn that on with your lens. And that right there, those are all of the features on the EOS Rebel T3. Those are all of the buttons. Some things not to do with your camera. Some things not to do with your camera. You don't want to touch the shutter, which is behind the mirror here, because if you do, you can jam it. You can also damage the sensor with your fingerprints. And if you get dirt onto the sensor, that can mess up the system and can also really degrade image quality. You do want to keep your sensor clean, and I'll show you in video 3 the menu item on how to do that, but you only want to do that if possible with a rocket blaster. Don't touch the mirror, which you can see here, because that can desilver it when the oils from your fingers get onto it, which can affect metering and focus ability. Manual focus ability. Don't leave your camera or lenses in your car because the heat can damage and warp the plastic, so can cold. Also, it makes it a really good target for people who would like to take your cameras from you. Don't store it in a plastic bag or box unless you have a rechargeable desiccant pack in it, because water can permeate plastic and that can cause fungus to grow on your optics or have other issues with moisture in the camera. Don't let it get wet. It's not weather sealed. This is an entry-level camera, so weather sealing is not part of the purchase price. And if it gets rained on, that can very easily short out the camera and ruin it. And just remember, your Canon EOS Rebel T3 is a precision tool and should be handled with care and respect. And as long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So this was the first of 3 videos about this camera. In the second video, we're going to talk about things like the mode dial and some of the buttons. And in the third video, we're going to go through the menu system, and I'm going to explain everything that is in the menu system. So if you have questions about how to use this camera, that's in the next 2 videos. If this video was a helpful introduction, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track creating content which is helpful and useful to you. If you'd like to subscribe, you can click the subscribe button. If you have comments or questions, please leave those below. I'm pretty good about responding every couple of days. If you have suggestions for future videos, let me know. If I have the equipment and technical knowledge, I'm more than happy to make those. And one last thing, thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in video 2.